Dominic, when he started a class with you, sort of gave you an understanding of the course itself, political communication, all right? If not the definition per se, but the understanding or the description of political communication, all right? So who can tell us what we mean by political communication? Who can tell us what we mean by? Okay, Evelyn, fantastic. Evelyn, let's hear you.
Yeah, according to McNair, political communication is the purposeful communication about politics. So any information out there on the media which is purposefully about politics is political communication.
Fantastic, a good point. Yes, thank you. Anastasia.
Okay, so political communication can be referred to any information that has political content, which will be of the interest to the public. That's political communication.
Excellent. I'm grateful. Thank you, Anastasia. Now, so let's go by these two, fantastic definitions given by these individuals. Obviously, with reference to McNair and the other definitions. Let me just have a look. Josiah says, before you go on, please ask everyone to mute his or mic. We're having a hard time listening. Okay, guys, those of you whose mics are on, I would plead that you mute yourself. You're mute when you have to speak. Now, when you raise your hands in the reaction button, after that, please, you can put your hands down so that it doesn't confuse that your hand is still up. Is that okay? All right, thank you. All right, so fantastic contributions, by these two, ladies. Now let's discuss the content of what they said. Now, so they're talking about political communication being, an engagement that has purposefully political nature or reflect on the political system. Now, in that definitions and plus the one that Anastasia actually gave, there are some elements or some attributes that you could actually individually tease them out or identify them in that sense. So who can actually give us some elements of things or identify the elements in this particular in these particular definitions that we've been given? Who can tell us? Identify the key elements out of which out of the definitions given. Okay, Evelyn.
I believe one key element is politics.
Politics, fantastic. So politics, that is the content or itself. I mean, the discipline itself. Politics, yeah. Tracy.
The other would have to do with the purpose or intent of the message being communicated.
Okay, so we're talking about the objective, to which that communication is being directed. All right. All right. Thank you. Inessa. Inessa. All right. Tracy, your hand is still up. Do you want to add something or it's the old one? Okay. All right. Who else want to add? Who else want to add? Okay. So, okay, Evelyn, again.
I also believe communication is also part because how you communicate the message, the medium you use to communicate the message, and then the feedback you get from your political audience or your electorate.
Okay, good point.
Also compromise.
Good point. Good point. Okay, thank you, Anastasia.
So I was going to say the people that are receiving the message, like the electorate at
the audience.
Evelyn said.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Julius.
All right, Doc, please, it can also be in various forms, like verbal, non-verbal
Fantastic.
signs and symbols.
Yeah. So we're saying that when you take the discipline of political communication, fundamental to it is the process or the act of communication, which is that communication is an interaction or an engagement between two or more parties, as we know. Obviously, the one who is actually transmitting and the one who is actually receiving. So that immediately gives two or more parties in communication. Obviously, we're talking about the object, that is the objective or the why the communication is being transmitted, whether it's to persuade, which in most cases that's what political communication is to inform, just to give an information, is to make people act, or is to educate, because information and education are completely different. So the object or the objective that the communication is directed at is also at play. And key is obviously the audience, the what do you call the politicians and the voters or the citizenry. Of course, in between that, is what we call the medium, all right, of communication. In between that, so there is a certain interface or there is a certain element that moderates, the relationship that's going on. So it presupposes that there is an element, in between, the two parties, and that element is what we call the channel, which in itself could be actually categorized into different forms. All right. So we talked about what do you call the visual text, or any other format of communication. But that is not the only element of mediation. There is also another element, which is the unit of transmission, you know, the unit of transmission being whether it is in a radio format or it's a broadcast, I mean TV, sorry, or it's a print, So you realize that the communication activity could only happen when there's a mediation, all right? Because as we speak, we are even talking about language. The language becomes the mediation, okay? So whether the person understands tree or doesn't understand tree, surely if the parties do not appreciate tree, they can't use tree. So they probably would use English, but that's only when the parties actually appreciate or understand that language, yeah? So the mode of communication itself becomes the mediation. Today we're looking at that aspect, all right? We're looking at mediatization. And the understanding of mediatization is that political communication had become mediatized. Now, when we say mediatized, we mean that it has become media oriented, meaning that nothing of political communication is without the media. Do you get it? It means that the media shapes, all right, the media influences, the media creates the environment of political communication. So political communication in itself could be said of not to be a function of the political system, but a function of media system. And it is because of what has actually transpired over the years. So if when Dominic, is Dominic around? You know Dominic already, right? So there is no need for me to introduce him. But is
Yes,
Dominic
please, we
around?
know him.
He's
Yes,
not
sir.
here. Dominic,
Um,
he's not.
no, Doc. He's
Okay.
not around.
Okay. So if you were, let me finish my coffee before it goes cold. Sorry. Actually, it's not coffee. It's tea. Because these days my heart can't take coffee. Sorry about that. The weather is a little bit cold. So Evelyn, yeah,
Sir,
finish this. Yeah.
please, in our earlier discussion, you said political communication has become media oriented. Does that basically define it that the media sets agenda for political activities?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. So not only the agenda, but we're saying that the media actually shapes not only the content, that is the agendas you're talking about, but also shape the society in which communication takes place. All right. So we're saying that when we hear mediatization, right? When you hear mediatization, the simple understanding is that political communication had become the creation of the media. All right. And not only that, but media actually influences the society in which the communication is taking place. And when we say the society or the environment in which the communication is taking place, we mean one, the audience, we mean two, the politicians themselves or the political actors, we mean three, the socio cultural structures, right, in which the communication actually takes place. And you can actually, if you look at sociocultural structures as some of the behaviors, all right, cultural behaviors, so many other behaviors that actually contribute to communication. And you mean even the shared issues that is at play, or what is being talked about, all right, as much as even the objective of or the objective to which the communication is being directed. The understanding is that media had been very dominant in shaping all these what do you call things that we're talking about. Is that clear?
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to exhibit that. All right, we're going to demonstrate the impact of mediatization, or what we're talking about as the phenomenon of mediatization. Who can tell me one single thing that they know that is not as a result of the media? Who can tell me? What do you know that did not come from media perspective? What do you know? Apart from the names of your family members and your friends. We're talking about issues. Now, what issue do you know that is not a creation of the media? Think hard and tell me. What issue do you know? Okay, Evelyn.
So this question is pretty difficult to answer, but then
Right.
I think it's propagation of the gospel, as in Christianity religion. Like
No,
we were born into
give
certain
an issue
religions.
specific. Tell me issue specific. I'm not talking about the existence of religion that even that's mediatized, but I'm talking about a particular issue that you yourself, like you have become aware of something, but that has no media influence. In the
I'm not
last,
sure.
let me limit it. Maybe in the last 1 week, what have you come to know that is not mediatized?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Okay. Is it Riberio? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How do you pronounce it?
It's Riberio.
Riberio. Hey, was
Yes,
it
yes, sir.
Papa? Hey, how many people can mention this one? Riberio. Okay, but it's a nice name though. Riberio. Has it got what do you call Brazilian, kind of, resemblance or origin?
Sir, can you hear me?
Has it got a Brazilian origin, Riberio?
Yes, yes, please.
And do you play soccer? It sounds like a football player.
I'm Everton Riberio from
Now,
yeah.
what is that, Bobo?
But his is spelled different, a little different.
Oh, okay. Are
Yes,
you
please.
a football fanatic yourself?
Yes, I am. Manchester City.
Eh. So
Yes,
you're a
please.
disappointed player trying
No, no.
to
Disappointed musician, yeah.
Oh, disappointed musician. Really?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Let me link it to Ochami Kwame. He's my best buddy.
That would be very great. When he listens to my song, he will know I wouldn't be disappointed.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes, sir.
You can put your hand on heart.
One time.
Okay. Remind me. I'll introduce you to Ochami.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
That's
Okay,
okay.
so with the question, from what you said that for the past week, what we've realized that isn't mediatized, meaning like policies or things around us, my mind got to what we are facing right now, which is the pandemic.
Mhm.
That is what my mind got to. So I think the pandemic is what we are feeling in reality, and it isn't really mediatized. If the either is mediatized or not, we are in danger. And then even the media is rather helping us to be aware and be safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks very much for that. But that's debatable. Now, who can debate Ribery on that? That the pandemic that is going on is not mediatized. Josiah.
Okay, so say with what Ribery said, we even got to know the pandemic by hearing it from the media.
Mm-hmm.
So if he says that the media is not shaping how we understand the pandemic, I really doubt, because we even got to know it by hearing it from the media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
okay. Now a good point. Before Hajara comes in, now let's even when we're discussing a phenomenon. So we started from the identification of the phenomenon by knowing it. So we're saying that the awareness of the pandemic is a product of the media. All right. Now, let's assume that was just when the authorities or the health authorities had used the media to pronounce that there is a pandemic. All right. Obviously, there was not going to be any other way they could do it because of the sheer size of the global world. All right. So they could only use media to announce that there's a pandemic. But when we talk about mediatization, we're going beyond the pronunciation of the pandemic, of the disease, all right? Because surely, even if we got to know it by the media, it wasn't the media who pronounced it. It was someone, that is the Global Health Organization people, who used the media to tell the world that there was a pandemic, all right? So that's from the simple perspective of mediatization. But when we are going to the critical part of mediatization, or understanding the details of mediatization, we're now talking about how the media has shaped our understanding of pandemic, which means that when you compare what the World Health Authority described as the pandemic, the sections or the various parts of the pandemic and the definitions and the names of them, by now, to what extent have we observed some kinds of differences between the original character of the pandemic and the now character of the pandemic? Now we're talking about mediatization. Are you with me? So we're talking about those, what do you call, parts of understanding of the disease. That is the media's creation. All right, that is media's creation. So who can tell me what are some of the things that we've got to know about the pandemic that we probably may say that it's as a result of mediatization? Now, for those of you who have the opportunity to put your camera on, I would want you to put your camera on so that it doesn't look like I'm the only one in class, right? It's good to be in interaction mode. If putting your camera on would present a problem to you in terms of bundle issues and things, that's when you have to, lock it. But we have to feel that we're in class, all right? So yeah, thank you. All right, Cecil, do you want to come in?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, great.
Sure, sir. So for me, the
This
very
your
first
beard.
time.
That's how I wanted mine, but I can't get it. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. I wanted all here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the very first time I heard of the pandemic, like you mentioned, was through the media.
Mm-hmm.
And the initial reportage is very different from what we have now.
Excellent.
And we can see that it has shaped the attitudes of people.
Mhm.
When the videos of the deaths in some countries were being recorded, you see that there was a lot of fear among the public.
Mhm.
When we also heard that initially the only people who were at risk was older people,
Mhm.
the attitudes of society was different. And then we got to know that it wasn't the case. Young people are also at risk,
Mhm.
and that's also shaped our current approach. Even the stakeholders that were initially engaged, it has been moved from just the World Health Organization to local stakeholders who also have inputs into our response to the pandemic. So this is how I can say the media has helped shape the discourse as well as the impact of the discourse on the attitudes of the various audiences.
Fantastic. Great point. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. To what extent, has the original character of the pandemic changed as a result of medias? And I can give you one perfect example, very simple one. All right. When I came back home, and when I'm talking about Corona, I call it COVID. All right, because that's what we hear the media say in Ghana, right? Call it COVID.
Yes, sir.
And then my son says, "It's not COVID, it's COVID." Then I say, "Oh, really? That's how you pronounce?" He said, "Yeah, it's not. There's no R in the spelling. It's COVID." So now I'm aware that is good, but the media calls it COVID back home in Ghana. All right. So that in itself is an impact or is an effect of media. So I'm actually pronouncing it because that's how I've heard the media pronounce it. And majority of people actually call it that way. But actually the spelling is different. And so the pronunciation is different. Currently, I'm sure all of you are calling it COVID, right?
Yes, sir.
Exactly. But then the English people will tell you it is not COVID, it's COVID. So we are
COVID.
talking about to what extent does the media influences a certain understanding, of a certain object. All right, Evelyn.
Yeah, sir, please, coming to the pronunciation of certain words related to this pandemic, during the lockdown, they were having this debate on pronunciation of words which emanated from this pandemic, like quarantine. The media pronounced it as quarantine. And then some professors and then people who are good in English came out saying, no, it's quarantine, not quarantine.
Fantastic.
And then also with the media, we got to know that the second wave that comes with this pandemic is more deadlier than the first wave. Through the media too, Ghanaians have been able to take away the fear that comes with the pandemic. And so it's like the second wave, it kind of not moving Ghanaians.
That's right.
It kind of, it's something, has come to stay with us. So we don't care. Like,
That's right.
because you will pick a trotro and you realize everyone in the trotro doesn't have a nose mask.
Okay. Yeah.
And so recently, our president addressed the nation and talking about the fact that the second wave is really deadlier. And so we should be wearing our nose masks. Even he has to put people to enforce citizens to wear it. So the military has to come in to be whipping us and all that. So the media has really played a role
in that
when it comes to this pandemic.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. Akosia, let's hear you. You're on mute. Yeah.
I feel the media, one way or the other, influences government decisions. People were not wearing the nose mask.
Okay. Akosia, you're far away. So can you come closer to your mic? Okay. We've lost Akosia. Okay. So Deborah.
So
Yes, sir. So please, coming to the pronunciation of some words like hand sanitizer, through the media, some of us got to know about the funny ways people pronounce the word hand sanitizer and stuff. And we also made funny videos about it. So the media also like educated us on how to pronounce the word. And then they also came up with funny ways in which people pronounce it. So even though we were in a pandemic, listening to those funny or watching those funny videos also give us some kind of like assurance or some kind of like hope that it's going to be
Okay.
over very soon. And then
Good point.
what's not.
Good point. So it toned down the fear. You know, it sort of watered down the fear, which is a good thing because then, of course, you know, there is the other side of the effect. But of course, that also waters down, you know, the appreciation of the difficulty of the situation or the scariness of the you know the situation. That's a good point. By the way, having said that, you know, um, if you can start compiling that funny videos and things that you've been seeing, that would be a good idea because there's already a book on journalism, all right, that is actually looking at the pandemic and the humor, all right. So they're asking for contributions. And I think you can actually start compiling that for your project, all right, for your dissertation come when you have to do it. If you know the sources, at least compile it for me. Yeah, that would be a good idea. I mean, it can be a very good blog for you to create. If you can create a blog and then identify all those, you know, articles, that would be a good thing for you. Or whoever is interested, you can start it, all right? And that can be a very good project for you. All right, good. Who else? Joel. Let's listen to Joel.
So, okay, I would like to say the media was able to shape our understanding about the corona and the precautions we have to go through. Something like washing washing our hands with soap and water,
Mhm.
and using hand sanitizers after washing, and disposing of how to dispose nose masks, and even how to cough in public. So I would say the media was able to shape us. It can give us an indication on how we should be able to do things during this pandemic.
Okay. All right, great point. Now, there was a point that being made about how the media has been informing government judgment. And I think, I don't know who was actually making that point. Is it Akosia before the line went? That was a good point I wanted
Yes,
to listen. Yeah, Akosia, go ahead.
the network was bad here.
Okay. So go ahead. You were making a point about how the media is actually influencing government judgment on the pandemic.
So you see, when the corona came fresh,
Mhm.
it was the media that one way or the other was putting pressure on government to do lockdown. So it was through people's opinion. They'll go for polls, and people will say the wave is coming, the government should do lockdown. So automatically, the president didn't have any option than to do the lockdown. And
Okay.
more also, the second wave, the media was going around TV stations, were going to church stations, and realized that brought to notice that people were not wearing their nose mask. So they kept complaining about it, especially Joy News. They kept insisting. So I feel one way or the other prompted the government to take a certain hard decision so that people will start wearing their nose masks again. That's how
Okay.
I
Great point. So that's the environment that we're talking about. How mediatization, you know, is or how the creation and shaping of the political communication environment, including actions of the actors, all right, and judgment of the actors, being influenced or being shaped by the media is exactly what we're talking about here, all right. So we're saying that mediatization is the processes or the actions of the media, all right, influencing the entire communication or political communication environment, including the content, the actors, the judgment, etc. Okay, Abdullah.
Yeah.
Abdullah, you are in karaoke mode. You're in karaoke mode, so.
In support of what
Mhm.
Evelyn said earlier.
Mhm.
Okay.
Be in
And
a position where
yes,
we can hear.
can
Yeah,
you hear
we
me?
can hear. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. In support of what Evelyn said earlier, I think even the indifference of the citizens to the COVID it's a direct influence of mediatization, because when COVID started at first, the media used to be posting regular updates of the active cases and tracking it so actively that citizens were forced to be reminded of COVID every time. But when media coverage of the active figures and how many people are dying and all that, people's attention started shifting away from the
Fantastic.
seriousness
Mhm.
of the pandemic.
Fantastic. Fantastic observation. Exactly. So at a point, we stopped tracking it, and people were saying, hey, so we don't see the numbers anymore, especially after the lockdown. All right. So again, the attitude of the public actually changed. That means that the ineffectiveness of the political communication on the pandemic right now is actually a contribution of the media, because we took our ball, I mean, our eyes off the ball, isn't it? At some point, and that has actually resulted in the indifference, as Abdullah is actually talking about. Fantastic observation. Okay, so let's see. Let's give the last chance to. Okay, Joe has spoken to Julius, our class rep. Then we'll move on.
All
Julius.
right, thank you very much, Doc. I would also want to say that in during the pandemic, one side that or one aspect that the media also really had focus on or brought about was the level of fear. I believe that at some point in time, the media kind of, I mean, the way their reportage was on the pandemic brought some kind of fear to a lot of people, and especially those people who were already with underlying illness. So let me give this classical example. During the pandemic, I think getting to the middle part of it when it started in last year, March, my mom wasn't feeling so well.
Mhm.
So I quite remember I visited her once, and as I entered the room, I saw her crying.
Mhm.
So quickly, I asked her, what's wrong? And she was like, almost yari about we dear, yeah, yari that dani dear, be one.
Mhm.
So I could draw the conclusion that at a point in time, and I asked her, where did you hear this from? And she was like, oh, Oma can peace FM, Oma can how Oma can ha.
Mhm.
So I realized that at a point in time, the way the media was throwing so much focus that they were reporting the pandemic in a way that if you are already with an underlying illness, then it is, I mean, the possibility is high for you to lose your life when you get infected with this virus. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. And that's a very profound, observation. Now, even what was meant by underlying condition, majority of times were not explained. You see, so there were a lot of caveats that we didn't actually get from the way the media reported it. What do we mean by underlying condition? Some few media houses will perhaps speak about some of those conditions, to the extent that people even thought that just by having malaria, you know, prior to, or just by having a certain kind of illness meant that it's an underlying condition. There were quite a number of times that I questioned, okay, so when you talk about you can't breathe properly, abnormal breathing, what did that mean? Again, the definition of it was just not there. So people thought that just in case you walk a little bit briskly and you're actually panting, that means that, it's an abnormal breathing, and that means the possibility of corona. Do you get it? Or COVID. So there were so many other, understanding and environment around, what do you call it, COVID, reporting and the political communication within that setting that were of media's what influence, that was of media's shaping, and that's what we're talking about. All right, we're not talking about just the the use of the media, to announce something, but we're talking about to what extent does the media actually shape that particular content, whether the original, in this case, if we go by Akosius in the point that the media perhaps might have actually influenced the political judgment, or whether the political judgment had been communicated and as a result of the media's influence, somehow had actually changed from its original character. And that's what we're discussing as mediatization. Are you guys with me? Okay.
Sure.
So we say that mediatization is a theory which argues that it is the media which shapes and frames the processes and the discourse of political communication, as well as the society in which the communication takes place. So we're talking about the idea that the media shapes and frames. And when we talk about framing, I'm sure a lot of you know framing. Framing, we're talking about the direction or the perspective of that in a particular communication. What is the in a perspective? All right. So you could actually frame it as a logical communication or as a logical, concept, or you can actually frame it from a emotive perspective. And what we realize is that most of the reportage on COVID, all right, were emotive. They were framed emotively, as Julia said. Immediately you get COVID, everybody knows that you're on your death sentence. So there were so many emotive aspects of the media or communication in terms of fear. All right. And remember, the government actually came out to say that do not spread fear. All right, do not spread fear. Because once you spread fear, it takes control of the essence of the communication and the effort to actually get people logically follow the sequence and follow protocols becomes a difficult task to do. So you realize the majority of the communication around COVID was actually fear oriented. All right. So, because that's how the media was framing it. We had a very few, logical understanding, or interpretation of the COVID reportage. All right. So it's simple as that. We're saying that the process of media shaping and framing, discourse, and the environment around discourse, and then of course the societal attributes or behavior and attitudes is what we're talking about as mediatization. Yeah. Okay. Any questions or contribution? Any questions or contribution? Anastasia.
So please, what is the discourse, if I may ask?
Okay. Who can help Anastasia? What does discourse mean? What does discourse mean, please? Anyone?
Doc,
Yeah.
yes, I want to try.
Okay. Why are you using Tracy? Are you Tracy? Or you're using Tracy's device? You can try. Let's listen to. Oh, hello? Yeah, Julius.
All right, Doc. So when we talk about a discourse, it's basically a subject matter. So maybe for now, what is the political, discourse in, in the country? So for now, we know, it's about the court issue. The election petition that Mahama sent to. So that's an example of a political discourse in here.
Okay. Yeah. So when we talk about discourse, we mean a theme of or the subject of discussion. We're talking about the dominant subject of discussion, for example. That's what we mean, by discourse. Okay. Evelyn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Doctor, I wanted to say that discourse also has to do with the discussion on media platforms, what is being communicated on media platforms. Excellent. Like what is new, what is
the
topical,
topic.
like what is
So when you hear public discourse. We're talking about the dominant theme, the dominant topic, engaging the public, minds and interaction. All right, Joel. Joel, go ahead. Joel, your line is on mute, so if you can unmute yourself. Okay, so now, haven't understood, what would mean by mediatization. This question would engage your minds, or should engage your minds. What happens when government and journalism become networked? All right. Now, the concept of mediatization actually suggests, or supposes that, government and media had become intertwined, had become networked. They've become, so to speak, one entity. Because we're saying that, a mediatization is when the media actually influences or shapes in the political communication. And so we know that one party in political communication is government, right? Government is one of the parties involved in communication. So if that's the case, then what happens? What do you think happens when government and media become networked? All right, who can actually, give us some insight on what the implications are, or what the end results are when government and media become networked in that sense? Evelyn?
Sir, please, in my perspective, I believe that when government and media become networked, there is a saying that familiarity breeds contempt.
Mhm.
And so the government will try to influence the media in certain ways, like some of their decisions they want to take about government, or some of the information they want to put across about government. Like an example, the media, as part of its function, serve as a watchdog to government activities. And so some of the journalistic or watchdog works the media wants to put across to shape government activities will be influenced, because the government will try to stop them not to, let's say, publish such information about them. So for example, if the monies taken at the airport for COVID-19 test is kind of influenced by government officials, where people are being asked to pay more, or people are being asked to pay less because you belong to this political party, or you have this relation with a political actor, then the media will try to, portray such messages to the public about this is what is going on and it's not fair and all that,
Okay,
to
so you're
check
saying
the
that,
government.
yeah, so there's a lack of independence. That's what you're talking about. When the
Yes.
media becomes networked with government, they
Yeah.
lack independence. Okay, great point. Thank you, Evelyn. That's a great point. Okay, Hajara.
Okay, so in this context, we can say that the government and the journalists become attached to each other in a sense where the government, if wants to inform the general public about a policy or a program that is doing for the public, they'll get to know it. In this case, let's use the COVID as an example. The government might decide to just make a briefing without informing the media. But then here's the case whereby the Ministry of Information has a program named Minister's Press Briefing. They could have made it Minister's Briefing, but then the press over there says that they've informed the media to come and join them so that they can give updates on activities and then updates on the COVID, whereby the media will give it back to the public to inform them that this is what is going on in our country based on this COVID issues.
Okay, great point. Thank you for that. Um, let's see, who do we pick? Okay, Joel. Joel.
So yeah, so I'll say if when the government and the journalism become network, I would
You're
say
in
they
karaoke
portray
mode.
whatever. Let's
Check
use
your,
anything they would. Pardon?
you're in karaoke mode. Check your network. Be in a position where we can hear you. You understand when I say karaoke mode, right? It
Okay.
means your voice is
Yeah,
singing. Okay. Yeah, go on.
that's Ghana network. So I would say like as I was given an example, command
Okay. We can't hear
anything
you.
portrays NPP. Understand the government anything
No, we're losing you.
anything
Akosia,
as I
come
was
in.
saying, NPP.
Um, please,
Hi.
when the media and the government
Hey, whose faith has arrived this morning?
Hey, Akosha,
says no me.
Akosia, go ahead. Yeah.
So when the media and government become network, I would say it would help make firmer decisions. So if I would use the example, this example, you'll be there, then they will announce that POSA is going 30%. Then the media will go to the marketplaces and they'll organize polls and people will be saying they're not going to buy yours at 30%. Then the government has to bring it to 20%. So I feel if the media, some of the decisions the government will take, the media will be in support. As in, if the POTA is going 30% and the government and the media are networked, the media will explain to the public that, oh, the POTA is going to 30% because of this, and that. But when they are not, it kind of creates a certain confusion. So sometimes the decision they'll make, it won't hold water, then they'll just withdraw it because people are speaking about it. That's how.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Akosia. Isaac,
yeah, so good morning.
good morning.
One thing is when the media becomes network with the government, they tend to become biased in the sense that when there is something going on in the government which is very bad, they can't really come out and then talk about it as they would have done if they were to be a separate or an independent body. So I think that also is one of the disadvantages of the media and the government coming
Okay,
together.
great point. So what we're saying is that we do not mean that the media would not be an integral part of government, systems of communication. Obviously, then that can work because the sizes of nations these days does not allow the beginning or the character of then political communication where politicians actually had direct access to the citizens or to the voters in order that they could actually engage with them directly. That era is gone. That era, maybe we can talk about social media era as a different conversation, but we're saying that because of the character of modern societies, guys, just a minute. All right, sorry about that. So we're saying that obviously for engagement with the society to happen, between the parties, there must be media. But we're talking about when we talk about the networked character of the political communication between government and journalism, we are talking about the over reliance or the overly over. I mean the yeah the almost like the abuse of the relationship between the media and what we call government, for example. They almost the relationship where there is no separation of power. All right, it almost had become, the media had become one of government's we'll talk about the fourth estate. All right, but where the media, and as Isaac said, is not able to demonstrate independence and had almost become a parcel of government. And that's what we're talking about. That's the issues that we're talking about, and the kind of implication that it has on society. Akosi, your hand is still up.
It's a mistake. Let me put it down.
Okay, so the old one. Okay, so let's move on. We'll come back to that point. So what does journalism do for politics, for example? So if we're looking at, the implications of the media and, the journalism and government in a network, perhaps we can actually see that from this perspective as well. I mean, what does journalism do for politics? Of course, we say that, journalism actually affords politics facts, yeah? It records, it creates statistics, events, policies, etc. So from information perspective, obviously as the COVID was actually being reported, we saw quite a number of facts being thrown away or being thrown into the society, all right, by journalism, all right. So they would tell us, the number of active cases, they would tell us the number of recovered, they would tell us all those things were facts, all right. And as those things are being put out on to the public domain, they are records, all right? They are actually, repositories, or, they are actually recorded, or they are kept, in public domain. So we can actually make references to them, etc. All right. And of course, they are in statistical nature, in order that can actually allow comparisons, allow for us. So once we see active cases in January, obviously when we see active cases in February, we're able to tell whether there had been an increase or there had been a decrease, all right, and what it means for us. Of course, journalism actually, what do you call, uh, put out events. Do you get it? Or they actually influence events. Again, policies, as we have actually talked about, they influence policies. They lead to creation of policies, or they preempt policies. And as Akosia said earlier, it took journalism to actually paint a picture of how people are not perhaps responding to certain, treatment or certain government or political communication, in order that stiffer punishment could actually be advanced. Okay. Again, journalism offers politics deliberation. All right. Journalism offers politics deliberation. So we were debating about whether the $150, COVID payment at Kotoka was the right thing to do or was too expensive. And that debate actually arrived, or we started, having that debate because journalism had actually pulled some facts from other countries to say Ethiopia is $80, Rwanda is $50, this Ivory Coast is $80. Why are we paying $150? So the journalism offers, or does to politics deliberation, so that we can debate, we can analyze, we can comment, we can offer opinion. All right. Again, journalism offers accountability. They investigate. So, like the situation of the what do you call, the COVID, PCR test at Kotoka, for example, actually came about as a result of the investigation, by journalism, to find that our neighboring countries are charging less than what we're charging. Our neighboring countries perhaps have more, capacity to deal with hospitalization than perhaps what we have, or we have more than what they have. And that is the work of journalism, in terms of the accountability, as we're talking about. Audit, yeah, they take stock of what we have. So how many hospitals do we have? Is that enough for hospitalization? Is that enough to handle in the COVID, for example. Voice for citizenship, of course, or for the citizens. So people actually pour out their frustration through, journalism, either, through phoning or podcast or, being spoken with at events, etc. And of course, campaigns, all right? So we've seen quite a number of campaigns where your mass campaign being pushed by journalism, okay? And all these just to support, what do you call the political system, So these are some of the things that journalism does, for politics. So when we're talking about mediatization, we're not talking about only the negative part of it, all right? But we're talking about the positive part of it. So as a result of mediatization, politics or the political system is able to follow through these and is able to perform its function. So we're saying that politicization and mediatization has its positive sides, where media actually helps politics to actually put out facts, to correct fact, to record, fact, to record opinions, to put out statistics, to compare statistics, to create events, all right, to actually create policies. Journalism offers deliberations. So as a result of mediatization, we're able to debate because journalism will throw out what agenda, will throw out opinion, will frame the issues, and those issues will be up for what debate, up for discussions, up for analysis, ask for, they will be up for what opinions. Again, the mediatization means journalism would investigate. They would not just take what government has said or what political parties have said, but they will investigate and then bring out for conversation, for what we call discussion. They will audit and make sure that they can actually put out what they think is the reality. They will provide voice for citizenship, for the citizens, and they will actually, push out campaigns as we have seen. Is that clear? Is that clear, please?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
please.
sir.
So that's
Yes,
the
sir.
that's the phenomenon of mediatization. Who would want to add a point or two? Maybe something I haven't captured. Obviously, when you read, you would have a lot more. Who has something to offer? Question or contribution? Okay, let's move on. Now, mediatization as a network politics, as we talked about. So these are some of the other issues that actually come up when media and government or media is actually networked with the political system. Anastasia. When I say
Uh-huh.
Anas, it probably will scare some of us. So it's better to say Anastasia, right?
So the name is Anastasia.
Anastasia. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Anastasia.
So please, with the accountability aspect, the voice for citizen. You were saying that the media sometimes creates platforms for citizens to share their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to add to the fact that sometimes the media also give us opinions. You see,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you take newspapers like this, you have portions that the media house have sat down to gather information about a particular subject. So when we citizens tend to read, we get to know their perspective or the ideas of the media. Am I right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship, isn't it? It's a relationship that it's back and forth. So certainly the media reflect in a society in as much as society actually reflects the media. That's what you mean, right?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Like the media sends their ideologies to us.
yeah. And in
Yeah.
reverse, because the media, remember, is not living in a planet different from the earth, right? So
Yes, please.
yeah, the media exists within a certain socio-cultural milieu, right? So there's
Yes,
a
please.
reflection, of the media on society and vice versa. All right. So in
Hmm.
as much as the media is throwing out ideologicals, or it actually influence ideological, because remember, as your journalism studies will tell you, through editorials and other mechanisms, framing, the media actually throw out ideas or ideologically influences us, right? But of course,
Yeah.
the idea that the media players, including ownership, including management, including workers, all right, including audience, are all part of the society. There's also an infusion of the sociocultural practices into or as an influence into the media space. So that's why a number of people would argue that the negativities that we have in the media, the complaints that we have that the media is not able to be independent, is a function of society, because the society does not allow itself to be independent in that sense. Are you with me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So
Thank
that's
you.
a fantastic contribution that you made. Yeah, great. So we're saying that mediatization as network produces saturation. Yeah, Deborah.
Please, I want to add that the reason why the media is able to be independent is because of their political affiliation and then privatization as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
With
great point.
media, yes, on media space in Ghana, you realize that most of these influential people in parliament or these big men in the country are the ones owning the media space. And then they have some political affiliation. So once you are working with them, that doesn't give you, you don't have the free flow to like report the news because the person who owns the media that you are working with is an NPC person or an NDC person.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't like say things that will go against the person's government. But when you
Fantastic.
do that, you might stop. So
Fantastic.
it's that's a problem. It's because of the privatization and then political affiliation of the media houses. That's why the media isn't able to be independent.
Fantastic. So the point that Deborah is actually raising, it's a crucial one, and I'm sure you might have actually discussed it in your other subjects. I mean, we'll talk about the lack of independence of the media as a function of a certain number of issues. For example, ownership. All right, media ownership, but also as a function of policy, because in other countries where there is a stringent policy on ownership. For example, you couldn't actually be a politician and own a media house, all right? Or you couldn't actually own a certain number of media houses or media platforms. In England, for example, you couldn't own print at the same time broadcast, right? So if you own, for example, the Rupert Murdoch's group own the Sun newspaper, their stake in Sky B, had to be reduced below 50%, because then if they allow you to own print and own broadcast, you're most likely to be in a very powerful position to influence social thought, all right? And so there are regulations to ensure that your power in terms of media ownership is limited in that sense, which means in countries where those policies do not exist, the lack of independence of the media is a function of ownership, a function of policy, and a function of market orientation in terms of profiteering. All right. So when profit making becomes the object of the media, for example, even when the ownership is not political, and so there was also not lack of there's also no lack of policy, but the media makes it as its object profitability. It means that they would actually sway towards where the money is, and that could be lack of independence. All right, so we're saying that the lack of independence of the media, or possibly a networked character of the media and media and government, could be a function of many things that Deborah has actually articulated, which includes ownership, which includes lack of policy, which includes market orientation, i.e., profitability. All right. So these are some of the things that we talk about. Fantastic point. Anesthesia. Anesthesia.
Anesthesia, sir.
Anesthesia. Anesthesia. Anesthesia is actually a condition in hospital, right?
Yeah, so but yeah, it's a different spelling altogether.
You see, take a simple name and let's pronounce it. Okay, joking. Go on. Anesthesia.
Yeah, as an old hand. Sorry.
Okay, old hand. Okay, great point. All right. So So we're talking about saturation, all right? Who can define what saturation means? Or who can tell us what saturation means? That mediatization, and as network policies actually produces saturation. Evelyn.
Yeah, saturation has to do with concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of concentration on politics,
Mm-hmm.
where sometimes you tune into a radio station and then early in the morning talk show is about politics, like
Right.
political activities that have transpired within the week
Mm-hmm.
or the previous days. And so for example is the parliamentary elections, Carlos Ahinkra snatching of the ballots, it became a topical issue in the media. Like the media was so much concentrated on such issues. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. So we're saying that mediatization produces saturation. All right. Now, it does not mean that we do not have the media, space, but we're saying that everything becomes, all the media content or production is political. All right. Remember, we're talking about political communication. So we're not talking about media content on entertainment or, on fashion or on culture. No, we're talking about the saturation of political communication. So we're saying that in an environment where there is mediatization or or as a networked politics, we see saturation of what political content, political communication. So everything is politics. Politics is the only game in town. And currently, as we speak in Ghana, tune into the morning event. None of the radio stations, maybe I may be wrong, but significant number of the radio stations are all discussing what political communication. Very least would you hear cultural conversation or fashion in the morning. The morning breakfast show in Ghana is almost like there is a consensus of the media elite that the only game in town in the mornings must be political communication. Saturation, absolute saturation, to the extent that people go mad about it. You tune in here, is hey, Ahinkra. You tune in here, hey, is this. You tune in here, hey, court case. You tune in here, that. Do you get it? And that's the point that we're talking about. When there is mediatization, there's saturation of political communication. Acceleration. Acceleration, next one. Who can tell us? Acceleration. Acceleration. Yeah. Acceleration. Let's okay. Who else apart from Evelyn? Who else want to add to us? Tracy.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basing my argument like of what I understand on the definition for acceleration. It's to it's to speed up something or has to do with the rate of how something is going.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So as network with politics, it's take it from the saturation feature. It's the media accelerates or speeds up the political activities in our society.
Yeah. You're
by
right.
constantly talking about them, constantly concentrating upon them, and so that's what I get from it.
If we look at the traditional character of media production, all right, let's use the typical one point. Okay, let me give Evelyn the chance before I come in. Evelyn, go on.
Sir, also taking up from what my other colleague said.
Yeah, what's the other colleague's
in
name?
Terms of,
we have to stop that. What's the colleague's name? Mention the name. You have to stop that. My brother, my sister in class. Ghana. Oh, what my brother said. Oh. Okay, what your colleague say? What's your colleague's name?
Sir, please, I've forgotten.
That was Tracy. Tracy.
Tracy, yeah. Thank you very much.
You guys, you have to learn how to use people's names on campus, all right, so that it becomes part of you.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, our society is so, what we call top heavy because of the lack of using names. So all of you are calling me Dr. Kobe, because you can't, just call me Kobe, all right? It's because you have lived with it that way. But in a very flat society, in society that is very relational, people do not take offense when you call them by their names, all right? So try and learn how to use people's names. And those of you who say, oh, just like my brother said, or just by my sister, who is your sister in this class? You have to stop that. So start making sure, conscious effort to use people's names, all right? If you don't know them, ask them what their names are. That bonds, that gives, relationship. Are you with me? Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
your colleague was Tracy. So use the
Yes, please. All right. So Tracy made mention of acceleration as in increasing speed. In relation to that, the media is always in a hurry to break news.
Fantastic.
Like political content. So during the elections, like every media station was in a hurry to project the figures, like they want to get it right. They want to, project the figures as in absolute figures. They're in a hurry so that they'll be like, yeah, this station or this, was the best and then was able to project correct figures and all that.
Fantastic. You see, so the point you and Tracy actually making is that the traditional character of the media is no longer, traditionally, if you take print, for example, who can tell us the process of news production? Are you guys PR or journalism or mixed?
So we are mixed. So we are
mixed.
Okay. So
we are mixed.
Okay. So the production of news, who can tell us the cycle? Production of news.
Pre-production.
Yeah, production, pre-production, yes.
Post-production.
Yeah. Okay. So give us the detail of each of the stages.
Pre-production, production, and post-production.
Okay, so what is involved in pre-production?
Okay, so pre-production is like the media house are preparing to give the news. Okay, so with the pre-production stage, news are being searched, news are being gathered. They prepare their items. They make sure the studio is ready. They make sure the presenter is set.
They even
That's what happens at the.
They even cross-check.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Excellent.
That's what happens in the pre-production stage.
Excellent.
And production stage is like is when the news is ready. So when the presenter is reading the news, like it's like it's like the production stages.
Even in production stage, the producer is checking the spelling on the byline, whether it's right or wrong, and then correcting that. Even in production, isn't it?
Yes, please.
And what else?
And then the post-production stage is like them correcting any mistake they did in the production stage. Yeah, so that it won't happen in the next production.
Exactly. And sometimes coming up with, what do you call it? Maybe apologies to say, oh, we actually produced content ABC and we found that it wasn't correct, and then rectifying it, isn't it?
Yes, please. Yes.
Excellent. Cecil, your hand was up.
Yes, sir. I wanted to add that there's a lot of filtering and editing before the news goes out.
Excellent.
But we barely see that lately.
Fantastic. So that's the point that Tracy and Evelyn actually made earlier, and which Anastasia has actually added, and you're talking about. The acceleration in terms of mediatization is abnormal. The traditional behavior or the processes of media is gradually fading. We do not see that. So the pre-production processes of news gathering, news filtering, and all those things had been cut short and been replaced, by speed. So we have actually replaced accuracy with speed. And if a typical example is what Evelyn actually highlighted, during these elections, media houses were in race just to report or to break the news. So breaking news had become the overly concentrated objective of the media houses, to the detriment of accurate reporting. And so that's what we're talking about now. So we're saying that mediatization actually produces acceleration. It produces saturation, it produces acceleration. And it makes it difficult for people or for the citizen to trust the news these days. Is that clear? So the traditional media reflection on news production, you see, news is just like producing products and services. So I always say that media sells news and that's their product. So just as, what do you call, Gihok sells brandy or Kasapreko sells Kasapreko drink, and it goes through the mill and it goes through the selection process of taking out the bad ones, replacing that, and making sure that you're having quality at the end of it. Media does the same thing. So on the media mill, someone goes to gather the news, they bring it to the editorial, they have to read it, check it, grammar correct, cross-check facts, make sure that other opinions are in it. Okay, so we collected views from Dr. Mensah. Okay, now Dr. Mensah made some allegations. Now, can you call the other party to confirm, to ensure that news does, the newsroom does all these, the editorial does all these things before the media comes to report. Unfortunately, that had been substituted with speed. Do you get it? So these are some of the kind of things that we're talking about. Yeah, Anastasia.
So it's like we are basing on strictly the traditional media, but looking at things, the new media, especially the bloggers, those that have come, so they don't follow the production, pre-production. They're always in a hurry to give us, and then they always tend to give us fake news. Me, myself, I can tend to be a blogger my own self. Some bloggers are not really from there, right? They've not even read what's about. They don't even know what news is about. They just post what other people post. So they tend to give us fake news.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Yeah. Yes.
Straightforward. That's exactly what he's saying. So that's true. So, and even the traditional media is now relying on that source of news, because of speed, because of acceleration. So the traditional media, instead of going out to source the news, actually sourcing it from the online, from the blogger, and putting it out there on the content as content. And then you realize that story itself is not true. So there had been a number of media houses that had to come out and apologize because they sourced the news from blogs, all right? And so the issue. So yes, these are some of the things that we're talking about as the effect of mediatization. And this intermediation, who can explain this intermediation? And as I say, your hand is still up. Is it the old one or it's a new? Okay, so Joe says, sir, you have link in the USA, please link me. Okay, Joe, we'll talk about it. I actually didn't think I have links anyway, but yeah. All right, so this intermediation. Evelyn.
Sir, actually my contribution is still on acceleration.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, comparatively with modern media, they place speed before accuracy, and that actually is a breach of our code of ethics, as in the journalism code of ethics. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that point. All right, so disintermediation. Yeah, nah.
So what I understand by this intermediation is taking away the middleman. So in this case, what I'm not sure of is who the middleman is here, because I don't think the media can do without politicians or the government, and I don't think that governments can do without the the media. But then the audience stands because both of them need to report to someone, and that someone is the audience. So right now, with this, who is the middleman that we need to take out?
Okay, All right, good. Yeah, Julius.
Right. Thank you very much, Doc. So I think with what my I don't want to use the word colleague, but I forgot the name just now.
Nah.
Nah, okay. With what Na just said, I think that the middleman here, I mean, is going to be the media, and I think the emergence of the Web 2, that is the internet, has brought a wide range of platforms, social media, where political actors are able to communicate whatever message they want to the people without, I mean, including without, I mean, using the media as the middleman. So in this case, the media loses its role as the middleman, where the political actors will fall on and communicate their policies or their information whatsoever to the people.
Yeah, and that is a function of mediatization, because there's a sense of frustration, right, from the political class, thinking that the media has actually hijacked the society. And in a sense, the media is exerting its influence on even the political actors or the politicians in a role. And as a result of that frustration, there's an attempt for disintermediation to say that, look here, you guys are actually influencing, or you're unduly being biased, all right, on what we think we want to carry on to society. And as a result, they are trying to gradually push away the media in order that they can have direct access to the people, based on which they think they could have, quality communication, or engagement with the people. And again, from the citizens' perspective, there's some sense of frustration on the mediatization. And so the citizens are also looking for direct contact, direct access to the political source, or to the source of what do you call the political communication, in order that they can reduce the impact of what mediatization. And so that's what we're talking about, now. So we're saying that mediatization has produced the sense of disintermediation, the idea that there's too much media influence. So now I want to have access to the source. Right. And that's what we're talking about. Great point, Julius. All right. Joel, you want to say something?
Yes. I wanted to ask if the disintermediation, I wanted to know if the media acts as like a middleman between the political party and the public.
So in a sense of disintermediation, we're saying that there's a removal of the media's role, all right, as the intermediate. Now, remember that when we talk about media, perhaps we may have to reconceptualize, because it is not only the media as the channel, but the media as an institution. Remember, there's a media as an institution, which is that there's a setup or of a certain entity called media, right? So Joy FM, TV3, City, that kind of thing, with a certain, ownership character. Are you with me? But then also there's a media as a channel, which is the internet or the radio frequencies and all those, or the letter, common letter, right? Common letter, or a phone call. These are media, all right? So we're saying that the media as an institution, there is a frustration about mediatization. That is, the media as an institution and its influence on the engagement of the actors of political communication. As a result, there's a sense for disintermediation, to remove the media as an institution in order that the politician can have access to the people. But of course, that access itself is mediated by the media as a channel. Is that clear? Does it? Joe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm clear now.
Okay. So that's why the increasing use of social media, or the popularity of social media.
Yes. So
go on.
Yes. As you were saying that the political party want to get into contact with the people. Can I say something like they perform two things? Let's say they get into contact with the people through the media and physically, because let's say during their rallies,
Yeah.
their supporters come together at a particular place and they
Of
speak to
course.
them. And
Of course.
also some of their supporters who can't make it to the place are home. So they use the media to speak to the people at home watching them. So can I say they perform
Of course, of course, but of
both
course,
of the
but
above?
yeah, but of course, but we're not restricting the political communication to only the campaign. All right, we're talking about the entire
Okay.
cycle of political communication. If you make it restrictive to campaign, then that narrows the conversation. Of course, yes, political parties, would want to organize physical contact to people, but it is almost impossible with the size of country that you have. You cannot even go to everywhere. So there's always the use of
Yeah.
media as a channel, whether through radio or through internet or through to get access to the people. All right. So we're looking at it from the bigger picture of
Yeah.
political communication in terms of policy pronouncement, in terms of feedbacks, in terms of ideas on how to on certain policies, etc. All right. That broader channel. Do you
Okay.
get it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Anastasia.
you.
Dr. Kobe, please, I'm confused. So are you saying that at this point the media's role is not really important here? Like the government wants to get the public and the
No,
public wants to get the
we
government.
haven't
They don't want
we
to use
haven't
a channel.
introduced importance in the conversation. We're saying
So
that we're talking about the end product of mediatization or the result of mediatization. All right. We're talking about the effect of mediatization on political communication. All right. And we're saying that saturation is one, that is too much, politics in the system. We're saying that acceleration is one, yeah, that is too much speed affecting accurate reporting. And we're saying that it is leading to disintermediation, that is frustration that people are having that the media is exerting too much power. And so they want to go around the media to have access to the people themselves. Are you getting it?
no, not really.
Okay. Who can explain to Anastasia so that maybe explain it differently? Who can do that? Evelyn, do you want to do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's see whether you can do a good job than I have done.
Okay. All right. So the effect of mediatization on politics. So Anastasia, we are now on this intermediation, and at this intermediation, the bigger picture from our last class, which our facilitator Dominic portrayed to us, is that we have the political actors, and then the media is the middleman. So the media takes information from the political actors to the political audience, and from the political audience to the political actors, in the sense that if the media take information to the political actors and the political audience, they give their opinion and share their grievances on whether they accept or they do not accept the particular information relayed. And so this intermediation has to do with the fact that they are taking away the middleman, that is the media. And so the political actors want to get direct access to the political audience, and the audience also want to get direct access to the political actors. And this has really brought about the sprung of the use of social media.
Yeah.
And so if you realize, political actors normally communicate to their political audience through social media. And then the political audience, by sharing their opinions and grievances, also communicates to these political actors on social media.
Fantastic.
By giving their comments and then their opinions.
Fantastic.
And so initially we talked about acceleration. And then acceleration has to do with the increasing speed in political activities. And we gave example that the media always is in a hurry to break the news about political activities. And then I also spoke about the fact that it is a breach of our code of ethics because the code of ethics is saying that the media has to place accuracy above speed. And here lies the case in our modern media. The media is not placing accuracy, but it's in a hurry to always do projections, and sometimes may lead to wrong projections. Okay, and then the saturation has to do with so much concentration on politics. And so in the morning, you switch on your radio or your TV, and then the discussion is on politics, political activities. If it is not about the election petition, then it's about Carlos Ahinkra. If it's not about the 3,000 cities people have to pay at the airports for COVID-19 tests and all that. So with this little explanation, I guess you understand now the effect of
Very much.
mediatization on politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, please, we understand.
Sir, I understand. I understand from the acceleration, I understand from the saturation, but it is intermediation. The fact that Foley was saying that we have political actors giving information through the media to the political audience, but now they want to avoid and then get to their political audience straight through social media. So, but this same social media is also media. So how can you take the middleman
so that's why. So that's why I was explaining to.
Let me.
Yeah, go on, Evelyn. Yeah.
Sir, please, I want to come in.
Yeah.
The social media is a medium through which the political actors communicate to the political audience. But when we say the media platform, that is where we come to the broadcast media, which is the TV and then the radio, where the political actor cannot directly go there and disseminate information, but rather has to do it through the journalists.
Exactly. So that's why I was explaining to Joel that we're talking about the media as an entity. All right. The media as an entity, not the channel. You see, the media as an entity, we're talking about the organization of a media with a set ownership. All right. Now, if, of course, you can talk about social media as an entity, but social media as an entity does not actually moderate the relationship. All right. It's just a platform through which people can communicate. Now, in the same sense, the broadcast was like that, but broadcast has a certain limitation, a certain ownership that they would not just take you there and go and sit you down to say, speak to your your MP, all right? Because that function is actually being handled by the media as an entity. Now, the frustration is that the audience, as Evelyn was actually talking about, feel that the media is not telling their story better enough because of certain biases. And I'm sure when we do propaganda, you understand that. All right. The audience feels that the media, because of mediatization, are adding up or are bleaching, or if I should put in a different word, are actually what's the word that you can use? They are sensationalizing the issues, and so they're not getting the real fact of the issues to the people, and as a result, the audience want to bypass the media as an entity and get access to their own political actors, and vice versa. All right. And that's what we're talking about at this intermediation. We're saying that the mediatization is breeding this intermediation, or the desire to go by the media in order that they can get direct access. So Gilbert says, I was a bit lost. You've cleared the air. Thanks. Evelyn, you're fantastic. Evelyn, teaching assistant Evelyn Foley. Evelyn, we've given you the teaching assistant, what do you call, award. Anastasia, your hand is still up. Or it was the old one? Okay. All right. Deborah. Deborah, you're on mute if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so to add to what you just said about the mediatization, I think the reason why the political actors and then citizens want to breach that gap is because of the angle in which the media takes the story from.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Framing.
what they want to say, the media doesn't tell the public or their audience that this is the angle in which they are talking about, or this is the angle in which they want their story to be about. But the media takes it from a different angle altogether. Sometimes, just as you said, the sensitization. Sorry, I don't know if I got it right.
Disintermediation.
So, yes. So because and sometimes even when they are given a good example can be PSFM. When they are given the news, when like the people want to give it from this angle, but with the way they are even reading out the issue or what the people talk about, you see, they make it jovial. They don't put any serious to it. That's why the political actors and then the citizens want to bridge that gap, the media and the intermediation. So that's
excellent. Good point. Thank you, guys. Okay, so let's move on. Obviously, volume and variety, you can understand that because of what we have actually talked about, there is overload, all right? There's a clutter in the system, and there's so much, variety. I mean, in our landscape, media landscape, because of the unimaginable power that media is assuming within our political space or within our social cultural space, you see quite a lot of media, all right, players coming into the system. Radio alone, I think we have more than 500 radio stations in Ghana, all right. Talk about television stations, and there are many, all right. Newspapers and even online, portals, so many, all right. So we're saying that the mediatization has actually led to these, things that we're talking about, volume and variety, and it gets people confused, all right? So let's move on. So this is the vicious cycle of mediatization. We say more and fast media, right? More and faster media, increase spin and control, all right? Increase spin control. Spin, right? So the effort to actually put a different angle to the stories, or the effort to actually frame the stories in a way that actually pleases the promoters of that particular story, is increasing. Evelyn, your hand is up, or it's the old one?
Yes, please, my hand is up.
Okay.
Sir, please, the volume and variety. Sir, please, there is a little bit confusion there.
Okay.
The fact that there is a lot of media houses in the system, how does it affect political party? How does it affect politics? Does it affect it in the sense that because there are a lot of cluster, they give different angles to the stories they get?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That's one of the explanations. So we're saying that there are quite a lot of diversity in what the story is. All right. Currently, as we speak, it is difficult to understand what the true nature of a discourse is, isn't it? Because of the angles that a lot of media actually put to it. So you have so many different interpretations. And as we even were talking about the COVID, for example, you find that there's diversity in the explanation and the various component parts of COVID, for example. So we're saying that mediatization actually breeds volume. So we have abnormal amount of political information, all right, out there, and in its various forms, in terms of its, what do you call, understanding, perspectives, sheer number, literally, sheer number of information out there, it's abnormal. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Anastasia, your hand was up.
Yes, yeah, I was kind of, I'm okay now.
Okay, all right, good. So we're talking about a vicious cycle of mediatization, and the way it goes, we're saying that more on faster media. We've talked about it, and we're saying that there's an increasing spend to to media. I mean, to news, for example. All right, the idea that people want to control what people know, all right, and as a result are framing from perspectives that actually promote the agenda of the owners of that particular, information or news is rampant in the political system, at the time of mediatization. More cynical public. So we're saying that the public is becoming cynical, obviously based on what we have discussed. They don't know which angle is the story. They know which angle is the truth. And there's nothing like truth, because what is true is the dominant, what do you call, theme. So the discourse that is dominant is what is the truth. All right. And it becomes difficult for the, the public to actually appreciate what is the true nature or the true story, behind the news. It's becoming difficult. And then more aggressive social media and journalism. So we're seeing that. So because of the problems that we're talking about, you have more aggressive, aspect of social media, because people want to know. And we see stories like what the media or what the traditional media don't want you to know about Africa, what the traditional media don't want you to know, or what the Western media don't want you to know about so and so. All right, we see all those stories around, and people come out and say this is the true version. And even then, how do we actually, conclude that indeed this is the true version of the story? So it becomes an issue, all right? And politics becomes media oriented, as we're talking about. In that circle, politics becomes media oriented. And when we talk about media oriented, we understand what it means. Okay. All right. So does that matter that spin, which is truthfulness and trust, undermined? All right. So does that matter? Politicization of civil servants, tail wags the dog, i.e., instead of the dogs wagging their tail, now we have tails wagging the dog, which is policy following media agenda. And I think, Akosia made this point. The idea that judgments and policies on Corona, for example, on COVID, most of it was as a result of the media's influence, as opposed to policy actually driving the media discourse. Rather, media is driving policy making. All right. And then focus on media results, not long term. All right. So media, as we said, the craze to report or to be the first to have reported the elections actually led to a lot of issues, as opposed to looking at the long-term effect of the reportage on the society to keep a very, holistic society. They were rather in speed to report findings, chilling of policy deliberations. So the idea that policy deliberation had become an what do you call anarchy. I mean, there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of very antagonistic environment on policy deliberation. So in these days, even when you listen to TV or radio, you watch TV or radio, and people are discussing policy, you see that there's a lot of antagonism. There's a lot of what do you call adversarial environment. People discussing policy, and they start shouting, they start even throwing blows, for example. All right. So that has become an issue because of the so many perspectives that we're talking about now. Journalism is not trusted anymore. I mean, it would be very hard. It would be news for you to hear that people's trust in journalism is about 90%. It would be amazing news. All right, Rachel.
Okay, sir. Concerning the focus on immediate results, not long term, can we use the example of the hydrogen peroxide issue happening now in Ghana, where some media stations or some media platforms are saying that so you can use hydrogen peroxide to cure the COVID, and some are saying it's not good. So they are focusing more on issues that will bring immediate results so that people can follow them, and they are not concerned more of things that will help in the long term. Can you use something like that to explain that?
Yeah, you're right. So if the reporting is not looking at what are the other implications of using that as treatment and taking that from professional health officers or advisors perspective to educate the public on its other implications, what it means for society, then of course it's becoming a short-termism. All right. So the media's focus about how do we end Corona now? We can end it by this particular, what do you call medicine or medication, without actually looking at it in the implications. Yeah. Margaret.
Yeah. Okay, so can we say that can we give an example of the election declaration by the media houses, whereby they tend to give out their declaration even before the EC official, the chairperson gives out the declaration. So in this sense, they tend to people tend to lose the trust they have in them.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly an example. Great point. Okay, so let's speed up and we can finish. Okay, so now let's look at the politicians' problem with political journalism in the age of mediatization. So the politician, is having problems because they think the media is unaccountable for its power. All right. So the media feels that, and we've had these conversations, over and over again. The idea that the political class think that media has become too powerful and unaccountable. All right. Who can actually explain this point? What are some of the observations that you've heard? You've taken. People complain that some media has, okay, Gloria. All right. Okay. So you know that one of the characteristics of media is that you don't need licensing to practice journalism. All right. Because that in itself becomes, a controlling device, censorship, etc. And the idea that, journalism cannot be gagged, or media people cannot be gagged. People feel that if you actually advance certain legal, protocols or certain legal accountability systems on media, you're trying to gag them. And you remember, we used to have, most of you would not know, but we used to have what we call the sedition law. All right. During Kufuor's time, the libel that Kufuor actually, removed, or actually, kind of removed it from our books. Now, people thought that that was an accountability tool, in order that could make the media much more sane and much more, thoughtful in what they report. So they will cross-check and make sure that, they are not, unnecessarily, defaming people and ruining people's reputation. But with the current regime of democracy, all right, that was repealed. All right. So the repeal of the criminal libel law meant that the media houses or the journalism can actually report freely with no fear or favor. All right. Now, that is actually interpreted by a lot of political actors as unaccountable power, that the media can do anything, say anything about people, and still go scot-free without taking responsibility for it. However, they might have actually ruined someone's reputation. All right. And a lot of examples have been have been recounted in the media about individuals whose reputation had been ruined by media reports, and it turned out not to be true. So people have, or the political class has a problem with media on the unaccountability of their power. But political parties or political agents or political officials must account for their power. So that imbalance is a concern. And that is one of the political parties or politicians' problem with the media. The idea that the media is unaccountable for the power that they hold, all right? Then bias. Bias is an issue. Of course, everybody knows that the report or the media report or news is written by someone, all right? If you write your news, you choose the kind of words you want to use, all right? So if you use certain words to describe the occasion or what you have actually gone on to report, it is a bias because you chose a particular language that perhaps the person who actually produced the actor of that particular exercise would have used a different word for it, all right? And that's why you heard Donald Trump actually calling CNN and co. fake news because he thinks that they do not actually report accurately on events that actually take place, and they do not use the right words. All right. So a lot of political class people actually have issues with that. Okay. Deborah.
Yes, I want to add up what this is.
Yeah, Deborah, your line is very far away.
Oh, okay. So please, I
Yeah.
want to add up with
Yeah.
the second point.
Yeah.
That's where the media gives a one-sided side of this, a one-sided story. Like they just present the one side of a story. So if giving the other party a chance to like come and defend what is going on, or to come and share their opinion on what is going on, the media just focuses on just one side.
Excellent. Excellent. Good point. Good. All right, Evelyn, yourself.
So there is always bias in the media because of media owners, and then people who sponsor media activities. So media owners, for instance, if I work in Kennedy Japan's media house, and then I went to cover a story, which is actually revealing dirty things MPP, I don't believe Kennedy Japan will allow me to publish such a story because it is going against his political party. And so he will make me write the story to favor his political party and make his political party look good in the eyes of its publics. So for example, during the 2016 elections, housing, we are in a comfortable lead, we are leading, we are winning, we are doing this, we are doing that. It is because of the people behind the activities of the media, the people who stir the activities of the media, the owners of the media, and then those who sponsor influencing and making media.
Okay, great point. Yeah, Dominic says the deregulation of the media system to a large extent contributes to the bias since media owners use the media as channel to perpetuate their party ideologies. Obviously, that's the point that we've made. That's a true point. So the deregulation from the 1992, from 1991, 92, is actually a contributory factor because ownership now could be private, unlike those days where ownership was very much public. Obviously, apart from political ideology, we're also talking about profitability. The idea that people set up media houses to make money, and so would actually go to the highest bidder. Akosia, before Julius actually come in.
Okay, sir. So you don't actually cast the hands that feed you. So automatically, if I'm spending on your media activities, it's what I want. You propagate my ideology. Indirectly, I will control the content you produce. So that's what is happening in Ghana now.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. Julius.
Oh, okay, Doc. So I think that's the same issue I was about to make, that the commercial interest of the media, add to their biases.
Biases, yeah, excellent. Now, so when we want to identify biases, we have to be very, critical. Biases may not necessarily be the ones that we can easily see, but biases, there are some inherent biases in terms of gender, in terms of age, etc., which are in a demography in nature. So you realize that certain stories are masculine, or certain stories are actually coming out from a man's perspective. Why? Because of the one who is actually writing the story. Certain stories are very feminine oriented because of the biases, because the one who is actually putting out the story is actually female. So if you look at the activities of Waju and Co and all those people, you realize that because most of them were driven and led by women, people criticize them to be too overly dominant, what called feminine dominant. But of course, there's the other side of the argument that would say that the society itself has been too masculine because the society in general had been overly, managed and supervised, and administered by men. And so the society dominantly, pushes men ideology or ideology of the man over the woman. So when we're actually looking at biases, we have to go beyond the obvious and look at some of the inherent biases that are actually in, political engagement or political communication. And most of these will come from perspectives of demographics, all right? Where we are from, who we are, whether men or women, our age, they all come into the analysis of bias, all right? So we have to be aware of that. Then, of course, obsession with process, yeah? We probably would say that the politicians have problems with the media because they want speed, all right? They want to get to the voters quickly, but then media want to cross-check, media want to do this, media want to do that, and so they want to bypass it. Cynicism, the idea that people have lost trust and faith in institutions, including media as an institution, all right? Lack of information, lack of expertise, loss of local press, of course, even, and that's one of the things that is very worrying. Currently, as we speak, all right, we have the powerful media, regional media, the TV3s or the Joy FM, the City FMs, now have what we call satellite, affiliates or affiliate with local press. So you go into a village, there's a local radio station that takes its feed from City FM. There's a local radio station that takes its feed from Joy FM. Why? Because obviously with radio, you can actually transmit beyond a certain what we call perimeters. All right. Now that practice itself is antithetical to journalism because you're actually eroding and you're actually asserting national news over local. And we are not actually having policies to deal with that. That in itself is a problem. So it is forcing the local politicians to become national politicians in character. Because if they do not actually get that, they don't get access to the media. And that's a big, big issue. All right. Yet we do not have policies to regulate that. And the owners are not actually thinking that that is an issue. I have a problem when I go to a village and in the morning thinking of hearing a breakfast show by local newspapers or by local radio stations. Then I will hear Bernard Avle's voice in that village. And I said, okay, so what is Bernard Avle's voice doing in this village in this morning? And that is superimposition of conglomerate media over local news. Now, how do you, if you're a radio station, how do you build capacity of young people in that community to also become sensational, become what you call morning show stars like Bernard Avle or like what do you call the Joy FM guy, all right? How do you raise local guys to actually get into that position so that they also become competent in holding, morning shows? If you have to transmit, morning shows from Accra onto the local radio station, and that is a problem, but we don't seem to see that. Seraphine.
Yeah, so sir, what about if the stations, they do pick programs from their mother stations, but yet still have some programs that they host in their local languages? What about that?
Yeah, but we're talking about, mediatization, and we're talking about the obsession of national media or dominant media over issues such as local news, all right? Now, when you do that, ask yourself, what percentage of airtime then do the locals have in terms of their own issues? What about having the local radio station publicize or have local programs, including discussing national news, as opposed to you transmitting, station in Accra to superimpose on the local one? So there is a concern of that development. The idea that, oh, we are linking to, and then they will beam that national conversation on those big radio stations onto the local. Why don't they beam the local into the Joy or whatever station? But of course, they will pick. Yeah, it's a serious case. And for me, as journalists, we have to be concerned about that practice. Remember that it's not being enforced by law. It is our own making that we're doing that. And we think that is development. We are killing local press, and we are killing local journalistic enthusiasm, all right? Because we are not giving the opportunity for the local boy or the local girl to host the morning show in their local village and build the competency so that they could actually get onto the higher levels and develop that what do you call that confidence in meeting and challenging national discourse. We're rather perpetuating the establishment onto the local front as well. Don't you think it's a problem? Yeah.
Sure, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go. Let's try and finish this. I think I've spent too much time. Okay, so let's look at the journalists also, the journalists' own problems that they have with political journalism, lack of resources for political journalism. You know, political journalism is one of the most difficult. Why? Because politics and the political system is complicated, it's sophisticated. When you talk about, you know, issues like corruption, to investigate corruption is not a daily issue. It is very complex issue. And the political actors are so complex and so difficult to handle that if you do not have enough resources, you will not see it. Even understanding of policy and policy implication, you need a certain level of complexity in terms of training, in terms of perspectives, in terms of continuous, you know, training to understand the nuances that go into policy. And sometimes when I hear people debate and take things on political lines because, or let me say political, but on partisan lines because they belong to certain, you know, political lineage, I just sit down and I grieve because, you know,
That's my mom.
I grieve because, you know, we do not have, we do not seem to have the perspectives that we need to have in order that we can understand, interpret, and give judgment on certain policy positions. But we think we do because we can literally understand the text. And so we think that's where knowledge is. That's where, but you see, most policy positions do not have literal understanding. You need a certain level of appreciation, a certain level of, you know, cognitive abilities to understand the implications of policy. I remember when we were discussing the free SHS, you know, in the before the 2016 elections, some of my colleagues, you know, my own colleagues had issues with me because I was one of the fierce critics of free SHS. And I stand by that now. Obviously, subsequently, the Minister for Finance came to articulate the same position that I had. And he had a bashing from his own party. Now, you're talking about giving free education to everybody, yeah, including me. I sit here, I take care of, let's say, 7 of my family members, all right? Or let's say 5 of my family members. Imagine that if I have my own son or daughter also going to secondary school and I'm having it free of charge. Do you get it? What does that mean? So some of us were actually critical of that and said, okay, instead of actually doing that, why don't you do means testing? And you cannot do means testing now. Why don't you give yourself a period, a moratorium period, and say that for the next 5 years, everybody is going to go for free, based on which we would actually develop capacity to start weaning off people who have the capacity to pay. So you set yourself 5 years to build systems, all right, so that you can identify who has the ability to pay and who does not, in order that the system will come to a certain level where you can have a fiscal space to use the monies that we are paying, or those of us who can afford to pay, onto other public services like health. By the way, the idea that those who have more money should pay more is common in our culture. That's why when you are the rich man in your family, you take on some of the family members and you take care of them. You take care of your nephews and your nieces, your uncles, sons, and all those, because you have broad shoulder. And that's what public policy is about. All right. Those who have more must pay more. Of course, it's ideological because those who belong to the right of center would disagree, on that perspective. But it's about rationalization and it's about public discourse on how can we move society forward. Now, when the journalists do not have that perspective and has not got that competence in order that can actually analyze the policy position from that perspective, the politician will go there, they will have the field day because you do not have the appreciation to understand the issues from that perspective. So lack of resources is also a problem for journalism. In order that they can tackle the political issues well, they need to be well resourced in terms of time, in terms of knowledge, in terms of money, etc. But what we see is that journalists come to programs and they are not even, resourced in terms of having vehicle. So by the time they turn up, they are late. By the time they turn up, they are hungry. They're asking you for transportation. How does that not affect quality? Shouting out loud, Magdalene. Okay. All right. How does that not affect quality? Are you guys following the conversation?
Yes, yes, Doc.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So we're now talking about mediatization from perspective of the journalist's own problem, political journalism, and the issues that it offers. Government secrecy, that's a big issue. Do not think that your own government would be transparent with you. Not even talk about geopolitics, all right? All these flamboyant things that we see on TV, there's a bilateral arrangement between Ghana and Nigeria, there's a multilateral agreement. Look, it is not as we see them. There's so many secrets, that government keep, even from its own people. And that's why the UN has some of the charter that they talk about, what do you call, the humanitarian intervention and all those charters, because governments sometimes are actually, wicked to their own people. And I'm using that in quote, right? Not everything that government actually make its own people see. So for journalists or for journalism to be able to fish out those things, they need resources because they do not think, and you do not think that government will be hand on heart truthful to its own people, that government will be hand on heart transparent to its own people. If government is broke, they will not come and tell you that government is broke. They will tell you that we have money, yet you will not get the public service that you need. When government has money, they will not tell you that we have money. They will tell you that we are broke because they would want to push some resources to somewhere so that you can pay more taxes, so that you can fund more. And those journalism needs to fish out to be able to, open up government or to be able to force government to be transparent with its own people and truthful to its own people. So journalism would need money, would need resources to do that. Journalism would need quality people, people who are not cloaked in political characters, people who have the independence that is required to say it as it is. Journalism needs that. And so, if there is a lack of resources, it will be difficult for journalism to do that. Government and parties spin and manipulate, of course, that's another problem for journalists. Journalists know that, or journalism knows that when government is saying shasro, it means shafom, right? If government is saying look up, it means look down, because they would spin the issues, they will manipulate the issue. And we have seen so many examples about the COVID reports, all right? Most countries are obscuring the data, they are sensationalizing certain part of the data, etc. All right. And then of course we've talked about this intermediation, increased role of social networks or social media, public relations. Currently, there's a huge PR going on about the court case. Yeah. There's a huge PR going on about the court case. As to who is right or not, of course, we'll allow the court to determine. But currently, what we know about the court case, a lot of it is PR, all right? People sensationalizing, creating good images on their cases, is what is going on. So how does the society come to terms with the real issues, if they do not actually go a step further or if media doesn't go beyond the curtain to actually let us understand the issues. But what we see is pure, public relations, image making, making sure that some people look good, some people look the other way. And that becomes what we call the heuristics, the shortcuts for us to appraise or apprise ourselves with the critical issue that is going on. And that is a problem. So that is mediatization from the journalistic perspective or the journalism perspective, the problems that we encounter, as a result of that. Yeah. The public's problem. So the public, as for the public there, we have so many issues, right? Too complicated. The political, journalism is too complicated for us. People are using buzzwords. People are using, all sorts of words that we don't even understand, all right? People are using concepts that we do not even understand. It's always in English, no local. People are using so many funny ways of blurring, all right? And I liked it when, somebody made allusions to City FM, not City FM, Peace FM's news reporter. Before they report the news or they cast the news, you see all sorts of funny adverts, Meanwhile, the news is at 12 o'clock, but they will not give the news at 12 o'clock. They will do all sorts of funny things. By the time the news is actually cast, you don't even have time. You had actually trained off and you've gone to whatever meeting that you have. All these things are propaganda. They will be reading the news, it gets to some critical issue, and they will cast some funny jokes. Oh, do you know this man? Oh, he's my uncle. Oh, he used to be my uncle. He used to come to. Then they will just, water down the effect, or they water down the seriousness of the news. They are all not, journalistic. So there are so many issues that the public has with the way political journalism works, including simplistic, pronouncements, lack of critical, perspectives, and the speed, the sensationalism that we've talked about earlier on. I'm sure when you read them, you get more of it. The potential of the new media for democracy, obviously, because of that, new media, social media, for example, is becoming more, prominent, giving citizens direct voice, as we said, gives citizens direct access to information, allows citizens to organize and campaign, allows the public to critique mainstream media. But you see, we should not actually look at it from the perspectives of media as an institution, because even from the media as an institution, now we have the mainstream media having social media dimensions, all right, social media platforms. So Joy FM has its own Joy FM on online or on Facebook. It wouldn't change. But we are talking about citizens creating their own pages and actually using that as a voice, a direct voice for in the activism, for journalistic purposes, etc. All right. Seraphine, your hand is still up, or is the old one? Is your hand the old one or is the new one?
Sir, it's the old one.
Okay. All right. Now, dangers of new media, as we've talked about, fragmentation and polarization, because there's little, what do you call, scrutiny or editorial judgment, all right, or editorial processes. People report from their own biases. Again, that does not actually take away the biases. If someone is from a different tribe and there's an issue involving another tribe, they will go and use their social media and then spew, emotions from their perspectives, just like the gender. All right. Today, when you go onto social media, you see a lot of gendered debates, and depending on who is speaking, whether it's a female or male, they're speaking from their perspective. So still, there are dangers there. All right. Bad information, as we know, people are spewing all sorts of, fake news, propaganda, distraction, short attention span. Of course, we do not give it seriousness, when we get those, messages from new media, etc. Of course, these are some of the social media things that we're talking about, and then of course the existence of traditional media, etc. Anyway, so we're done for today. I think the rest of it you can actually use. All right. Anyway, I have another class at just about 10, so we can actually finish. Any questions or contribution? Just 2 or 3 people, and then we can wrap up. Yeah. Any questions or contributions? Any questions or contributions?
Sir, please, with the mediatization of politics, some of us we came in a little bit late.
Okay,
so if you can
so
please,
that one is your problem, right? So okay, that one is your problem. So I think you can elect someone to help you out. Either Julius can help you for 10 cities, or Evelyn can help you for, let's say, 15 cities, because Evelyn likes money. So she will add extra 5 cities to that. Okay, don't worry. Another time would actually go over before we start the next class. But I'm sure your colleagues can help you, and you can follow.
All right.
Yeah, you already have the slides too. So let me see. I was supposed to put the materials in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, who else wants to say something? Who else wants to say something? Yeah? Any contribution or any? Okay, so I've added the key concepts in political communication in the chat. You can see them, right? Julius, can you guys see them?
No, sir, we can't see it.
No.
No, sir.
Check the chat. I've put 2 documents.
Is it the WhatsApp group?
No. I'm talking about the chat. Currently the chat box.
Section, right?
The chat box, yeah.
No, Doc. I can't see anything.
Wow. Eugene says seen. Eugene can see it. And Eugene, you can see it.
Hey, Eugene.
Eugene, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Eric too says you can see it.
Yes.
Hajara says you can't see it.
Those
of you not using proper phones.
iPhone.
I'm sure those who can see it are the iPhone ones. Anyway, so learn to use proper phone, right? Or those who are using, MacBook can see it. Those who are using some other computers, they can't see them.
Yeah, proper is relative.
Sorry?
Proper is relative.
Proper is relative. Oh.
Proper is relative.
Proper is never relative. It's one. It's only one. You're either using Mac or other something computers, or you're either using iPhone or some other phone. Someone they call them Samsung, something. I don't know that phone.
Bias.
Okay, good. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the class, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay,
I came in late, but at least I've learned something.
Excellent. Yeah, get your guys to actually help you out. Appreciate it. So hopefully we'll meet next week.
Sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
All right.
Guys,
Thank you.
make sure to
Enjoy
answer
your
my
weekend.
questionnaire for me, right? Did Julius give you my questionnaire?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay.
Some of us have already
I
answered.
I spent 90. And when you answer it, please share it. Share it amongst your platforms as well for me. Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate it. All right. Thank you guys. Dominic, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice
See you guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will send the video to Julius so that he shares it.
Oh, no.
Right.
Okay. Thank you guys. Bye.